We're excited to share our new feature with you today. So this is a short video in 3 parts around the new BI API that we've released to all PPO clients. The video is in 3 parts. Part number 1 is the PPO functionality of how to access the API and create the necessary API keys and select the data you want. Part number 2 is I want to illustrate how this can be used in a very simple BI tool like Excel. And then part number 3 is a more sophisticated tool, and in this example I'm going to use Power BI. It's important to note that this functionality is being built to support all BI tools. We use an open standard, so you should be able to use the BI tool of your choice. So this new feature is available under the administration menu, and the first thing you'll need to do is activate the functionality under the user groups that you'd like access to. Have it. Its function name is called Business Intelligence API, and in this case I have access to it under the administration menu as a PPO administrator. So if I go to administration, under the reporting submenu, I'll see the new feature, Business Intelligence API. So by accessing it, there's 3 important parts. Part number 1 is the API URL. I'm just going to copy that, and for the sake of the demonstration, save that. It's then the API key. You're able to add and create as many API keys as you'd like. This is obviously the mechanism in which you provide access with a secure access key and secret password to the data, and then the export settings. Currently this is enabled. It's scheduled to run on a daily basis. It last ran just after 3 o'clock this morning and is scheduled to run again 3 o'clock tomorrow. And the information that I'm interested in from my data model, my PPO entities, is costs, employees, governance requirements, issues, projects, and scorecard. So I'm happy with those export settings. What I'm going to do is go and illustrate how to create an API key. Simple as clicking the add button, give it a description. It will then create an access key for you, which I'm just going to copy onto my notepad. And then most importantly is a secret key. This secret key you'll only ever see on the screen, and you'll only ever see it once. So it's important that you record and save that. And I now have an API key that I've created, which I'd now be able to access. So from a PPO point of view, it's that simple in terms of the functionality. I'm now going to move to part 2, where I'm going to illustrate how to use this from your BI tool. This tool that I'm using is Excel. If I click on data, it's important that you find the ODATA feed. That's the standard that we've applied that will provide access. And it's then going to want to connect to your data feed. So that's why this information was important. Provided with a URL. If I then click on the basic, it needs a username. And then the password, which is the secret key in this example. And what the BI tool will now do is connect via the API to the underlying data model. Those are the entities that you saw in the previous section, the costs, the employees, the governance requirements, and here's the underlying preview of the data. I have the project ID, the category, the subcategory, the year, the month, the budget, the actual, the spent, the forecast. And if I'm comfortable, I'm simply going to select all of it, and I'm going to click load. And what is effectively happening now is the BI tool of choice, in this example that I'm using Excel, is going to be extracting and retrieving the information from the BI tool. You can see it's busy running over here. Depending on how long it takes to run the data set, depending on how many entities you're using, and what type of data that you're pulling down, it may take a second or 2 or a minute or 2. But you can see in this case, all of that data is loaded, my costs, my employees, my governance, my issues, my projects, and there's the underlying data. So what it's now done is it's effectively connected to the API using that secure API key that I created and gave it. It now has the data model with the necessary fields in the tool, in this case Excel, as well as the underlying data. So now I can use the basic functionality. In this case, I'm going to just build a quick pivot table. Say pivot table, and my source would be from data model. I'm going to pop it in that corner over there, and there's my underlying data. And in this case, I'm going to say I want to see the number of projects per phase, per status, and then pull in the ID. And there are my number of projects. I can flip this around, and there are my number of projects per phase, per status. And using basic Excel functionality, I would now be able to do analysis and graphs and all these things using the underlying data. Flipping to step number 3 in our video, part number 3 is the Power BI demonstration. I'm going to use the same mechanism, get data, find the ODATA feed. It's going to ask me for those same connection again. So the URL that I'm going to point it to. It's then going to want to know the username, and most importantly, what Power BI calls the password, which we refer to as the secret key, and I'm going to connect it. Once again, it's going to follow the same process as what you saw in part number 2. It's going to connect to the underlying data model. It's going to connect to the fields. It's going to bring that back to me. If I take projects, for example, it's going to provide a short preview. There's my project, the name of the project code, the required end date, the status, the phase, the priority, all the fields that you would have gone and configured on the entities that you've selected. In this case, I'm going to pull all the data down. I'm going to click load. And like you saw in part 2 of the video, it's now going to connect via the API. It's going to bring down the data model, all the fields and the field structure, the right field types, and then it's going to extract the underlying data. Once again, depending on how much data you're pulling down and how many entities, it might take a couple of seconds, might take a minute or two, might take a couple of minutes. Important to remember that when you extract the data. There comes my first data. The employee information has come down, my project information, my cost information, my governance, my issues. There's all my data. So the data has been pulled down. The underlying data model is there. If I once again show you the projects, there's my underlying data model with all the different fields that are there, the name, the description, the status, and I'm now able to use my BI tool to do whatever reporting I'm interested in. In Power BI, I can go to the Model tab, and you can see over here the data model that's been pulled down. There's my employee table, there's my issue table, and you should recognize the fields from your data entities, the age, the contact person ID, which would be the ID of that person, the create date, how many days it's overdue, and you can see which are date controls and which are numeric and those type of things. So there's the underlying data model. And now from within the tool, in this case Power BI, I would be able to go and create the necessary reporting. Once again, this is not a demonstration of the BI tool specifically, more the capability or the functionality that PPO now supports. But in this case, I'm going to go and say once again, show me the phase and the status. And there I'd be able to quickly, quite simply build a report that shows me the number of projects, count of projects that are active, completed, or proposed in the different phases. So I can now go and build all the functionality that you'll be able to do using the BI tool of choice. Hope this is useful. Hope you use this functionality, and we're excited to see some of the reporting that you do using our new BI API.